We got a major Jalen Ramsey trade update that we need to discuss on this edition of Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am your host, Nic Rohloff, because apparently there may be trade negotiations beginning between the Miami Dolphins and the Los Angeles Rams on a Jalen Ramsey trade for the second time. It's kind of weird that it's happened twice. There's also rumors about a Dolphins sticking point. So this is why you hit that sub button. We're on the road to 70K subscribers. Join the channel today for the latest around Jalen Ramsey and the Miami Dolphins. I'll say this. I want to keep Jalen Ramsey. I'm very open about that. Not only because I think he is a good corner, a good player, but also because the Dolphins don't have anybody on their roster that is a good replacement. But it feels like the Jalen Ramsey and Mike McDaniel kind of relationship is beyond cooked at this point. That's kind of the rumors on how this trade kind of was derived, because him and Ramsey, and that being McDaniel, didn't get along. And apparently Jalen Ramsey might have been one of those players that did not show up to meetings on time throughout the season as well. Well, Jeremy Fowler went on SportsCenter this past weekend and shared a lot of information about a Ramsey trade, saying that Miami has been calling around on Ramsey, trying to work a potential deal. The sticking point here is that the $24 million in guarantees. My sense after asking around is Miami has not been overly eager to cover some of that bill, which sort of makes a trade hard to pull off right now. The LA Rams, it could be a reunion here. They've been in the mix. They are a team to watch, certainly for Ramsey. And speaking just specifically on that point of the financial aspect of it, Miami should absolutely stay with that thought process. Chris Grier, listen, they've already paid $4 million in bonuses to Ramsey because a deadline passed earlier in the offseason that was owed $4 million to Jalen. And I think the Dolphins here are trying to be smart. Do they want to trade Ramsey? Feels like they do, but they're not going to do it and then cripple themselves for the rest of the offseason. They need to have financial flexibility to potentially sign a Jalen Ramsey replacement, or to be able to go out and sign other free agents to help this roster be more competitive in the year of 2025. And I will say, if the Dolphins stick with that thought process of not going to overextend themselves, and they are saying, hey, listen, we are not eating money, well, it's going to be, one, harder to pull off a trade like Jeremy Fowler noted, but it also will force the Dolphins to take a package from said team that is slightly lower in value. Like if the Dolphins were like, yeah, we'll eat the $24 million or whatever the financial amount of money is, well, they will probably get a better pick in return from said team. If they make the other team eat the entire contract or whatever the guarantees, they're not going to get a good enough pick back that probably makes fans happy. Well, it's interesting that the financial aspect is brought up because I think he's got a relatively solid contract. Now, it obviously is tailored to be on the Dolphins roster this year because the cap hit, the roster guarantees, the base salary benefits Miami in a large way, which makes it tricky in a potential trade. But I don't think his cap hit is that crazy. And, well, if you did not like the cap hit going forward for Jalen Ramsey, well, you can get out of it relatively easy. It's actually a very solid contract outside of 2025 to move off of, which is why it is odd that the Dolphins and Ramsey ultimately came to the conclusion that a trade was the better part for both sides. Well, before we get into more about potential trade talks with the Rams, I want a fill in the blank from the people watching. Jalen Ramsey will play for the blank in 2025. Could be the Dolphins, could be your answer. Could be the Rams, could be a different team. Let me know your thoughts right now. As you saw from Fowler, and we'll continue to talk about here, right now the buzz is solely on the Los Angeles Rams, the team that he played for in 2022, 2021, and won a Super Bowl for before being traded from Los Angeles to Miami. Well, Sean McVay has been the subject of a lot of these rumors because he actually spoke to the media about the Ramsey trade talk, saying that he and Jalen have kept in great touch ever since since they ended up trading him to Miami. Those conversations are ongoing, as I'm sure they are with multiple teams, and we'll see. But we're never going to shy away from opportunities to increase the competitiveness of our roster or add great players. And as trade talks seemingly continue to happen, it feels more and more likely that Jalen Ramsey will be wearing a Los Angeles Rams jersey once again. You have Jeremy Fowler from ESPN talking about Ramsey and the Rams making a lot of sense. You have Sean McVay saying himself that he wants to add Jalen Ramsey. Like, that was the most political, non-direct, yeah, I want to trade for Jalen Ramsey I've ever seen from Coach McVay. Well, then on Monday afternoon, NFL Insider Ian Rapoport goes on the Pat McAfee show and says, I do still expect Jalen Ramsey to be traded. The Rams are an interesting possibility. Him and McVay are still good friends, and that would make sense as a landing spot. So now, over the last 48, 72 hours, however you want to say, you have Jeremy Fowler linking Ramsey and the Rams. You have Ian Rapoport, and you have Coach Sean McVay himself. Feels very likely that the Rams are going to be the team that ultimately trades for Jalen Ramsey. No, if they can just figure out the financial side of it and the draft compensation, I think Ramsey will be in LA once again. And as I mentioned earlier, because of the salary, because of the age of Jalen, and the Dolphins' unwillingness to eat some of that contract, I think you're going to get a mid-day 3 pick in 2026 for Ramsey. Rams have a lot of picks this upcoming draft, thanks to the Falcons trading back up into the first round a couple weeks ago. Well, they do have their own 5th-round pick. I think that makes sense. Maybe it's a conditional that can get up to a 4th and, heck, maybe even a 3rd. But right now, I would project Ramsey's trade value as a 5th-round pick in 2026. And unfortunately, that's what Miami is just going to get in return if they don't eat any money. I think you could argue if the Dolphins ate a lot of the guarantees and whatever team traded for Jalen Ramsey only had to pay, $5, $6, $7 million this season, you could probably convince them to maybe send him a 3rd-round pick, a late day 2 selection, because Ramsey was still really good in 2023, still very solid in 2024, playing in all 17 games, and could transition to safety to end his career due to his ball hawk and ability to read the field ability. So, yeah, I think Ramsey has good value in the league as a player. It's just the financial and age side of it. So if Miami took and ate some of those money amounts that were talked about earlier, well, then you'd probably get a better draft pick in return. Wrapping up the conversation here shortly, but make sure you get your Dolphins hoodies. Listen, I know it might be a little warm in Florida right now, but if you're somewhere else or just trying to get geared up for the season in the fall, get your Dolphins hoodies now. Chatsports.com/Dolphins hoodie. Links in the description and comments of today's video. $40 off this sweet white hoodie right now. Regardless if the Dolphins trade Jalen Ramsey, keep Jalen Ramsey, it really does not matter. Chris Grier needs to add a corner to this room. Even when you look at the depth chart with Jalen Ramsey, it's still not good because you have to rely on either Storm Duck, Cam Smith, or Ethan Bonner to be your CB2. Do not trust Artie Burns. Do not trust the 5th-round pick, Jason Marshall Jr., and I think it's just irresponsible to trust one of those other guys on the roster, whether it's B.J. Adams, Cooper, Ethan Robertson, to potentially take that jump to CB2. Cater Co, who's slotted into the nickel right now. We've talked about these 6 names ad nauseum this offseason ever since the first wave of free agency. The NFL draft has concluded about who the Dolphins could sign. They've been linked to Rasul Douglas. They've been linked to James Bradbury. I've mentioned Asante Samuel Jr. quite a bit. Maybe Mike Hilton, Stephon Gilmore, Shaquille Griffin could be options as well. But the point is, you have to sign one of these 6 to either complement Jalen Ramsey if you end up mending things over and he stays on the roster to be CB1 and you sign one of those guys to be CB2, or if you trade Ramsey, you need one of those guys to headline your room because you simply can't trust Cam Smith. Unfortunately, you can't. I have him as your CB2 because I don't know who else to put. The former 2nd-round pick from South Carolina has been one of the biggest disappointments for the Dolphins over the last 2 seasons. Didn't play in 2023 under Vic Fangio. Dealt with injuries, was not adequate to see the field. In 2024, dealt with injuries again. And then when he actually got on the field, was absolutely horrific. In 103 cover snaps last year, he gave up 16 catches on 19 targets, a QB rating of 122.4. I will never forget the game against the Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr. took him to school. Trey McBride took him to school. One of the reasons why the Dolphins missed the playoffs was because of their couple snafus against the Colts in Week 7, the Cardinals in Week 8. And I think you could blame Cam Smith and Jordan Poyer for a lot of those reasons they lost in Week 8 to Arizona. They blew a 13-point fourth-quarter lead because they couldn't stop a nosebleed in the run game or in the passing game. And most of that was on Cam Smith. I do not trust him whatsoever. What are your thoughts, though? Maybe you have more confidence in Cam Smith having a miraculous breakthrough in year 3. Do you trust Cam Smith, type Y for yes or type N for no? I'll be honest. Going into the minicamp, the OTAs, the training camp, preseason, whatever you want to call it, in June, July, August, I think it's the biggest storyline on the team. I really do. You can talk about Tyreek Hill. You can talk about the safety battle for the starting roles, the offensive line shuffling, and who's going to be the exact combination. But figuring out who is going to be CB2 to Jalen Ramsey or to whoever you ultimately sign in free agency, because they will sign someone, is the biggest storyline. Will it be the UDFA second-year man Storm Duck? Will it be Ethan Bonner? Will it be Cam Smith? That battle is going to be the one that we closely monitor for the rest of the offseason, and I'm absolutely fascinated by how it will ultimately unfold. But make sure you are subscribed because we will cover that this rest of the offseason. Cam Smith, this entire CB room. When the Dolphins inevitably sign someone or trade Jalen Ramsey, we'll have you covered with videos or a live show too. So hit that sub button, join the channel today.